The bells of Aradel rang through the pale morning mist, like silver lies. From the tallest tower of the palace, Princess Alara stood motionless, cloaked in ivory silk and quiet dread. Her hands were cold against the balcony railing. Below, a city she barely knew cheered for a wedding she didn't want. They were celebrating her union to Lord Ronan Vale, a nobleman who had clawed his way through political bloodlines, secured power through whispers and gold, and convinced her father, King Aldrich, that marrying his only daughter to him would unify the East and silence rebellion. But Ronan wasn't a man to love. He was a man who collected people like territory, and Alara would be next. She had never been allowed to say no to the velvet lessons that carved away her wildness, not to the tutors who taught her obedience in the language of tradition, not to the crown that weighed on her, even though she never wore it. Her mother, Queen Seraphine, had once been her only warmth in the cold, echoing palace halls, but Seraphine had died when Alara was 13, too suddenly, too silently. Whispers still haunted the court, but no one dared speak them aloud. Her father grieved by locking her memory away, and Alara was left alone, with silence, with duty, and with a future already planned in ink and stone, a future now sealed with a ring. That morning, as the bells rang, and the kingdom prepared to watch her wed a man she feared, Alara made her choice. She was not going to marry Lord Ronan. She was going to vanish. Not tomorrow, not at the altar. Tonight, her escape began in the dark, between the heartbeat of lightning and the breath of the sea. Wearing a servant's cloak, a dagger hidden under her dress, and a pouch of stolen coin tied at her waist, Alara moved through the lower halls like a shadow. She knew the schedule of the guards. She had studied the shift changes. She had waited years for the moment when her life could become her own. The tunnel beneath the kitchen led to the old stone passages built centuries before, meant for emergencies or escape. No one used them anymore, but Alara did. She emerged into the wild wind and rain of the southern cliffs, her boots slick with mud, hair plastered to her cheeks. The sound of waves crashing below wasn't fearsome. It was calling her, and down in the hidden cove, barely visible through the storm, was a ship, large, unmarked, its sails furled, hull dark as ink. A ghost ship, some said, a legend. The Oathbreaker. The ship had no lights. Only the dim outline of her shape rocked in the water, tethered to a forgotten dock below the cliff. Alara slipped down the stone path, soaked and shaking, heart hammering against her ribs. Two men stood guard at the dock. They turned as she approached. "We're not taking passengers," one growled. "I'm not a passenger," she replied. "I need to disappear." "I'll pay. You're noble," the other sneered. "Even under that mud, I won't be for long." From the deck above, a new voice cut through the rain, low, steady, calm like distant thunder. "Let her speak." A man stepped into view, broad-shouldered, drenched, wearing a long dark coat. His face was carved in shadow, but his eyes, sharp silver gray, glinted even in the storm. Captain Cale Thorne, the man the court called a traitor, the man who had once sworn an oath to the crown and broken it. Alara didn't look away. "I'm not cargo," she said. "I'm not a lost girl. I'm someone who refuses to be owned." Cale studied her in silence. A wave struck the dock. Her cloak flared in the wind like wings. Finally he spoke. "We leave with the tide. Be on deck, or be forgotten." He turned, and just like that, Alara stepped onto the Oathbreaker, and left her old life behind. The ship moved like a beast awakening from sleep, slow at first, creaking, groaning, then suddenly, alive, as the tide pulled her out into the open sea. The Oathbreaker sailed west, away from the cliffs of Uradale, and everything Alara had ever known. She stood near the aft mast, soaked, shaking, staring into the dark, trying not to collapse. No one helped her. No one offered a blanket or a word of welcome. This wasn't a court. It was a ship full of ghosts, men with sun-bleached hair and scars down their throats, women with tattoos that spoke of other nations and crimes, whispered only in ports where the law dared not go, eyes that had seen death, hands that held weapons like second skins, and above them all, Kale. He moved like the ship obeyed him, like the sea bent to his will. He didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. His presence cut through silence like a blade. He never introduced himself, never asked who she was, but he watched, and Alara knew the test had begun. Her room was nothing more than a dark corner beneath the main deck. No mattress, just wood and rope. She made a bed of her cloak and used her bag as a pillow. The ship rocked through the night, and for the first time since her mother's death, Alara cried, not for weakness, but for relief. She had done it. She had left the palace, left her cage, but freedom was not soft. It was sharp and cold and filled with eyes waiting for her to fail. At sunrise, the crew began work. She rose with them. No one gave her orders, but she followed the rhythm. She scrubbed the deck, coiled ropes, learned to tie knots until her fingers were raw. They called her silk behind her back, but when she didn't break, didn't cry when the rope tore her palms or the salt stung her cuts, they began to nod, just once, just enough. Kale said nothing for the first 3 days. Then on the 4th morning, he found her alone near the helm, wiping the brass compass with a cloth she'd stolen from the kitchen. "You clean like a maid," he said without looking at her. She kept wiping. "I scrub like a survivor." He turned to face her. "You're noble. I'm no one." He stepped closer. "You lie well, but your spine still walks like it expects a throne." She didn't reply. He looked away. "What are you running from?" "I'm not running," she whispered. "I'm choosing." Kale was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded once. That was the beginning. The days passed like waves, endless, sun-bleached and sharp around the edges. Alara lost track of how long it had been since she left Uradale. The rhythm of life on the Oathbreaker took over her body. Wake, work, watch, eat, sleep, repeat. Her hands toughened, her muscles ached less. She learned names, faces, nicknames, learned who to avoid when rum was passed around and who always had extra bandages. She learned how to move with the ship, how to predict the weather by the scent in the wind, how to speak the language of sails and silence. But mostly, she learned Kale. He never told stories, that he listened. He would sit at the edge of the deck at night, legs crossed, a flask in one hand, gaze locked on the horizon. He didn't command by fear or force. His crew followed him because they believed in him, even when they didn't understand him. Alara wasn't sure when her admiration for him shifted into something heavier, something that made her stomach flip when his hand brushed hers while passing a map, something that made her chest ache when she heard him laugh. Once, just once, at a joke told in the kitchen galley, something that made her feel seen, and seen in a way she had never been in the palace. Kale never looked at her like she was delicate. He looked at her like she was capable, and that was more dangerous than any kiss. One afternoon, she found him sharpening his blade on the quarterdeck. You fight like someone who used to be a knight, she said. He glanced up. I was never a knight, but you protected someone, she said carefully. He paused, then nodded. Once, Kale looked back down at the blade. Too long, long enough to learn that loyalty gets you a dagger in the back. She sat beside him, folding her legs. You know who I am, don't you? She asked. I knew the moment you stepped onto my dock, he said without hesitation. Why didn't you turn me in? His eyes met hers. Because you didn't ask for pity. You asked for passage. That's a rare thing. She looked away. They would have married me off to him like a prize mare. Kale's grip on the dagger tightened. I know what Ronan Vale does to what he owns, he said. I've seen the aftermath. You knew him. Enough to know he doesn't deserve you. Silence. Then her voice, soft. No one ever said that before. Kale didn't answer. He didn't need to. She already knew. The storm came without warning. A wall of black clouds rose in the east, swallowing the sky in minutes. Winds howled like screaming ghosts. Rain lashed the ship like chains. The oathbreaker rocked dangerously. Sails snapped. Wood cracked. The crew scrambled to tie down barrels, secure ropes, anchor the mast. Alara worked beside them, soaked, hands frozen, boots slipping. Kale moved like a shadow, shouting orders, grabbing ropes, holding the ship steady with will alone. Then the main beam cracked. Alara spun too late. The swinging boom caught her shoulder, knocking her backwards, sending her sliding across the slick deck toward the edge. She screamed, and suddenly, arms caught her. Kale, he slammed into the deck, one arm around her waist, holding her just above the water. Their faces were inches apart, breaths ragged. You idiot, he growled. You could have died. She clutched him. So could you. His hand tightened in her hair. I've had enough of watching you disappear. Then he kissed her, not softly, not like a prince, but like a man who had been starving for too long. She kissed him back. The storm raged around them, and yet for the first time in her life, Alara felt still. The kiss didn't change everything, not immediately. There were no confessions, no dramatic proclamations. When the storm ended, and the sun finally returned, Kale and Alara went back to their duties. Ropes still needed coiling. Sails still needed repair. The sea had no mercy for lovers, but something had changed. Every time their hands brushed, there was a pause. Every time their eyes met, there was a lingering. Every night, they sat closer beneath the stars, and when Alara fell asleep in her hammock, she did so with the memory of his mouth against hers, and the phantom feel of his hand around her waist, like he was still holding her from falling. She didn't ask him what it meant, and he didn't offer, but silence was no longer empty. It was electric. 3 days later, while reorganizing Kale's maps in the captain's quarters, she found it, a small leather pouch, inside, a pendant, silver, delicate, familiar. Her breath caught. It was her mother's. She remembered it from her childhood. The crest of Aradale on one side, a sunburst engraving on the other. Her mother never took it off, until the night she died. Alara's fingers trembled. She turned slowly. Kale was standing in the doorway, watching her. Tist, you knew her, she said. He nodded. She trusted you. Her voice cracked. Kale stepped inside. She was the only part of that court worth anything. Alara clutched the pendant. They said she died of illness. She didn't. His voice was steel now. She was silenced. Alara felt the world tilt beneath her. I always suspected, she whispered. Kale sat across from her, eyes clouded. She discovered what Ronan and the Eastern Lords were planning. She tried to stop it.
Your father ignored her. They feared her influence, her voice. She died because she was brave. Tale, Alara said. She died because she believed the crown could still be saved. Kale met her eyes. I stopped believing that the day they blamed me for her death. Alara's hands tightened around the pendant. They lied to both of us. He stood slowly. They lied to everyone. From that night forward, Alara wore the pendant around her neck. It wasn't a symbol of royalty. It was a warning. She wasn't running anymore. She was remembering. She was becoming. And Kale, he stopped pretending. He found her on the deck one night, stars above the wind quiet. He stepped into her space, like he belonged there. You scare me, he said softly. She tilted her head. Why? Because I don't want to lose you, and I lose everything I care about. Her fingers found his. Then don't lose me. He pulled her close, his hands at her waist, and this time when he kissed her, it was gentle, sure, like he knew exactly who she was, and didn't want to tame a single part of her. Then came the sails. 5 of them, royal colors, Aradale's navy, crest painted in gold. Alara spotted them first, and her breath froze. Kale joined her at the railing. His voice was calm. They found us. 5 ships closed in. Royal banners fluttered in the wind. Cannons loaded. Hulls gleaming. At the front of the formation was the Ember Knife, Lord Ronan's personal warship. Its bow was carved with the sigil of House Foyle, a golden serpent wrapping around a sword. Alara stood on the quarterdeck of the Oathbreaker, the pendant around her neck rising and falling with every breath. Kale's voice cut through the silence. All hands to battle stations. The crew surged into motion. Barrels rolled, blades were drawn, muskets loaded, sails trimmed for evasive turns. Alara grabbed a rope and secured it. She had no intention of hiding. Kale stood beside her, his eyes locked on the approaching threat. You don't have to fight, he said. I didn't come this far to watch. Their eyes met. Neither flinched. When the ships were within shouting distance, a booming voice echoed across the sea, amplified by royal magic. Alara of Aradale. Ronan's voice rang. Surrender now. I offer you life, comfort, restoration of your title, but defy me, and you'll drown with the traitors. Alara stepped forward. I am not your possession, she shouted. I will never be your wife, and you will never wear a crown while I draw breath. There was a pause. Then, very well, Ronan replied. Sink them. Cannons thundered. Water exploded. Beside the Oathbreaker, as the first volley missed wide, Kale moved instantly. Evasive, cut wind port side. The ship veered, ropes flying, sails snapping. The battle had begun. It was chaos. Cannons roared from both sides. Flaming arrows lit the air. Boarding parties tried to grapple onto the Oathbreaker, but the crew was ready. Alara fought beside them, dagger in hand, blood on her cheek, heart pounding like a war drum. She moved like she had been born for it. Kale cut down 2 soldiers trying to breach the helm. His blade gleamed in the firelight. His coat was torn. His lip bled, but he didn't stop. Then it happened. A musket cracked. Kale jerked back, stumbling, blood soaking through his shirt. No, Alara screamed. She caught him before he fell, lowering him to the deck. Blood poured from his side. His breathing was shallow. Alaris, he rasped. Stay with me. I'm not going anywhere, she cried, pressing her hands to the wound. You don't get to die on me. Not now. His eyes fluttered. Alara, don't speak. Just breathe. Just stay. Above them, the battle raged on. But Alara wasn't done. She rose, blood on her hands, eyes burning, and she took the helm. She turned the Oathbreaker toward the Ember Knife and shouted, Ram it. The crew looked at her. stunned. Then they obeyed. Because they didn't see a runaway princess anymore. They saw their captain. The two ships collided. Wood splintered. Soldiers screamed. Alara leapt onto the ember knife. With blade drawn, she found Ronan on the main deck, sword in hand. He grinned when he saw her. You've become something fierce. You turned me into this. They fought. Steel clashed. Sparks flew. Ronan was strong, but Alara was faster, smarter, and more determined than anyone he had ever underestimated. When he slipped, just for a moment, she drove her dagger into his side. He gasped, collapsed, and didn't rise again. The royal fleet scattered, and the Oathbreaker sailed home, with Kale still breathing, and Alara at the helm. Kale survived. Barely. The wound was deep. Infection tried to take him, but Alara never left his side. She slept beside his bed, cleaned his wounds, fed him with shaking hands when he was too weak to lift the spoon. Every moment she thought she'd lose him. She remembered the way he had looked at her in the storm, like she was his anchor, and he was hers. You fought like a queen, he whispered once, delirious. I don't want a crown, she whispered back. I want you, he smiled. And that night, his fever broke. Weeks passed, the sea calmed. The crew rebuilt the Oathbreaker, repairing sails, sealing the cracks from battle. Ronan's flagship had sunk, and the rest of the fleet had retreated to Aradale. In shame, news traveled fast. Some said Alara had died at sea. Others said she had joined pirates and gone mad. But those on the coast whispered the truth, that a crownless queen had taken to the waves, with a traitor captain at her side, and together they had broken the grip of kings. Kale stood on the deck. As the sunset painted the water gold, Alara joined him, her hair loose, his coat draped over her shoulders. You could return, he said. Claim your place. I've already claimed it, she replied. Here, he looked at her, long and full of everything he didn't say. I love you, she said, not because you saved me, but because you didn't try to change me. I wouldn't dare, he whispered. She touched the scar near his ribs, now bandaged and healing. You broke your oath once, she said. Will you make a new one? He pulled her close, lips near her ear. With you, I already have. And when he kissed her, it was with everything the sea could not steal. Epilogue. The ghost ship years passed. King Aldrich died in his throne. Ronan's house fell. The crown changed hand. But sailors still speak of a ship that sails without a flag. A ship of shadows and starlight. He say its captain has eyes like the sky before a storm. And beside him, his queen. She doesn't wear a crown. She wears salt on her skin, fire in her blood, and a dagger with her mother's crest. They say she was once a princess, but now she belongs to the sea, and the sea keeps her secret.